All right, hey everybody. See if we can adjust this a little bit. It's better than it was before, at least. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you could hear that. Just the pop, the beverage. So, hey, thanks for joining me. Thanks for hanging out. It's good Friday afternoon, right? Excited to do some painting here. Keep working on my breachers. I decided that I was going to go with the red gloves. If you were here last week, we were talking about how I wasn't sure what I want to do with the gloves because they have armor gloves, and I've always just left those brown. And here I'm deciding to not just leave them brown. Right? I'm painting them red. Right. So yeah. So that's what we're doing today. So I got a few more guys that I gotta paint their gloves red on, but otherwise we can start moving on to some washes and more interesting. Or no, actually, I have to do some other blocking first, but then we can move on to some washes. So that's what the business is for today. So we'll probably be doing reds and blacks. But then I also want to talk about, of course, some exciting stuff about Arks of Omen and what I'm thinking about as far as the Farsight book goes. So yeah, I know this is probably the more interesting part, right? Other than the reds and blacks, right? So all right. So how many points do I have in total? Forge World, Tau included. I don't know. I have always been curious about that, and I just have never added it all up. I would guess, somewhere around 4,000 points, but it could be more, it could be less. Like, I'm not sure. I guess I would be really surprised if it was less than 4,000, but I probably have something like that. Maybe somewhere probably between 4,000 and 6,000 points would be my guess. Yeah, that would be my guess. Yeah. Yeah, it is totally hard to. It is really hard to change schemes, right? And I've been happy with my scheme here, but there are plenty of times where I see a color scheme. It's like I wish I don't want to go through the effort of repainting stuff, and I wouldn't like to paint with or play with an army that was multiple different schemes. Right, and that's certainly the case now. I think that was a little bit less of a case when you could mix sub factions, right? Like when you can mix sub factions, that'd actually be pretty cool to be painting with a couple different schemes. You could say, hey, these are my Tau sept, these are my Borkan sept, and move on from there. But now that everything has to be one sub faction again, I just would not want to play with the army that has multiple different color schemes on it. So yeah, so I there's certainly been times when I've been tempted to do, especially like a scheme that's white, like a white and orange scheme. I think looks really nice. Yeah, there's a bunch of kind of things like that just when you see them and they really pop, it's like, dang, that would be cool. But I'm always happy with this scheme. I think it looks sharp. There are plenty of red armies out there, though, is the thing, right? Like if you get a color on the tabletop that is a little different, it's nice, right? Like it just makes your army stand out, especially like in a tournament setting. But yeah, I have a kind of a dislike of playing other red armies because I just don't like the look of all the red on the battlefield. I like it when you can look at the table and it's not just one color, right? And that's a pretty minor thing, but nonetheless, right? Like it's nice. It looks good. If you're trying to sell somebody on the hobby, you wouldn't show them a tabletop that's filled with two armies that have the same color scheme, right? That just wouldn't lend itself to the narrative as much. So, yeah, I'm one of those guys. Yeah. Well, gray and orange is the main color, and blue for the energy parts, right? And I used to do the energy bits exclusively green. I like including both, right? I don't know. I think that just like is a little bit of little extra variation can be nice sometimes to really make the town models shine a little bit more because they do have a fair amount of like little buttons and sensors and all sorts of little doodads, right? And if they're all the same color, that can be a little much at times. Not that I haven't done that. For the most part, my models have just exclusively green bits, and they look a little Christmassy. I'll be honest, but they're otherwise, I really like the red green mix. Yeah. So, oh yeah, like small changes, like I think there are changes that you can, just accept or because of, painting preferences, painting skills, stuff like that, right? But there are also changes that you can rationalize. It's like, oh, well, these guys are, veterans and these guys are fresh out of training or whatever, and they have new gear versus old gear or whatever, like there's all sorts of you can make up whatever you want if you are so inclined, right? Nothing saying you have to do that either, but as far as I don't know, maybe I feel like if I'm at the point of having to justify it, I'm probably missing the point. like if I'm adhering to rules that I've made up in my head and I'm trying to like justify breaking those rules, it's like, what? Just change the rules, man. You made them up. There's no you don't have to convince anyone other than yourself, right? Yeah. All right, I'm painting gloves here. Why am I'm like touching up all the other stuff on this guy? I love pistols on these guys, by the way. Pulse pistols on breacher teams, I think, just look really good. I think they look good on strike teams too. But I think that I'm so glad that they made pulse pistols included, essentially. So you can just have them on the model. They look nice. Like they just add a little bit more to the model, I think, in a way that is beneficial. But you get not that you rarely ever use them, right? But they're just kind of cool looking. I wish you got more pulse pistols in the actual kit, though. That's the one downside. I don't think there's quite enough pistols for you to give one to every Shazla, right? Which is too bad. Okay, so right, Arks of Omen stuff. A new Arks of Omen dropped today, and or tarot, a new Arks of Omen tarot dropped today, right? And it's called what, the Star, and it looks pretty cool, right? It's just like a little star behind some shrubbery, and I know the prevailing idea is that it's not anything related to Tau or Farsight or anything, but I think the prevailing thought is that's about the Lion, about Dark Angels, which probably is, but something that I noticed looking at it was that it has all these branches in front of it, and earlier we saw that there is a tarot card for the Tree of Life for Farsight, and Farsight we know also has kind of a botanical base, right? We know that there's like branches and stuff on it, which I don't know. I would assume there's not actually a literal tree in the fluff for Arks of Omen, but maybe there is, and maybe that's the tree that's on Farsight's base. I don't know, but we know that there's vegetation on Farsight's base as sculpted, right? That's not like a static grass that anybody's putting on there. There's hard plastic, hard plastic terrain that's on his base, and it looks very much like a tree or a shrub or something, right? And and so the fact that there's that Tree of Life card, I think, is interesting because it could be more literal than what we're thinking, or it could just be a nod to the sculpt, I suppose. But if that's the case, right, then maybe there is something to this new tarot card being related to that Tree of Life. Like maybe there's something going on in the story that tie those things together, because we know, I think Games Workshop has said that the last book is really supposed to kind of pull it all together, right? It's like it's like the rug from The Big Lebowski, right? So I think there's a possibility there, right? That we could have there could be some connection to that. And if that's true, right, then the star, the eye, could be something about the perspective of chaos, or or maybe the star is the lion, or the Imperium or something, right? Like maybe that's more metaphorical. But I don't know. It's interesting to me to think about the idea that maybe there is actually a literal tree in this story, and that's modeled on Farsight's base, and there's something happens to the tree, or the tree's being observed in some way, or the tree's a MacGuffin or whatever. I think like the more realistic, right, is that the Tree of Life tarot card was about the life sustaining power of the Dawnblade. I'm guessing that's more of what's going on there, is that it's just supposed to be talking about Farsight's longevity, but maybe not. Maybe there's something else. Yeah, no, so Evan, I think that's totally what it is. I think I think I'm going into the deep end here and kind of tinfoil hatting it, but yeah, I think the branches on Farsight's base are just mundane cherry blossoms trying to really lean into more of a samurai aesthetic, or something like that. I don't think that I think it's pretty unlikely that there's literally a tree in the Arks of Omen story that Farsight's visiting and stuff like that. But it is fun to indulge that very literal interpretation of the tarot cards. But of course, the tarot cards are not literal. They're meant to be metaphorical. For example, Farsight's depicted as a young human, right? So it's not literal, but I do like in the one, and so we're chatting about this. This is probably going to be part of the next video I release for next week. That's going to be on the next Arks of Omen book. So like what to expect with what I think is going to be what I think is going to be happening with the next Arks Omen book, and the Tau rules in it and stuff like that. So if that's of interest to you, consider this a preview. But yeah, I think it's interesting that on those tarot cards they had a picture of like a blue horse, right, which is essentially the Empire or the fire cast, the fire cast, because he has the blue horses, supposed presumably referencing the appearance of Tau, and then it was armored with Tau armor and had either the Tau symbol or the fire warrior symbol. I always think that's confusing that the Tau Sept and the Tau Empire symbols are well, I guess the Tau Empire symbol and the fire warrior symbol are the same, right? And I mean, that makes sense in the context too, right? Like, we're talking about this as a probably militaristic maps, and so they're presenting the military branch of the civilization, and yeah, so that makes sense that those things are synonymous. But it would be nice. It would be convenient if the Tau Sept and the Tau Empire had you didn't have to say Tau Sept versus Tau Empire to really clarify what you meant. But again, it still makes sense, right? Like, they're called the Tau because they're from Tau. Oh, cool. Wait, did I paint the bottom one? Yeah, I did. Okay, cool. Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's a little surprising that they didn't do more to differentiate the two words when they did the whole apostrophe thing. So if you're relatively new, when Tau were first introduced, the spelling was just TAU, like the Greek letter Tau, and they kept it like that for years. And then just one day they basically decided that they were going to put an apostrophe there for presumably copyright reasons. Like, you can copyright Tau with an apostrophe, you can't copyright the word Tau because it's a generic term. So they added the apostrophe, and I remember when they made the announcement of that in like a Warhammer community article or whatever, they described the apostrophe as like a little shield drone on the word, so, which I found humorous. But yeah, so it used to be TAU. They had the apostrophe. You would think that maybe they would do a little bit more retconning if given the opportunity, like they did with Eldar and Eldari, right? But that was kind of, or Imperial Guard and Astra Militarum. I can't say that either of those changes really were received favorably, though, so can't blame them for trying to keep things more the same. So the new Arks of Omen book for Farsight, I'm excited for. It's a little. It's kind of too bad that they have chaos demons in the current book, because it would be, I feel like that limits some of the cool stuff that they could do in the Farsight book, but it does make sense that the chaos demon stuff is in the Anground book too. Ooh, or is it in Vashtor? It doesn't matter. It's just not in the Farsight book. Too much water on my brush. Getting soupy paint. Yeah. All right. So, yeah. I need to figure out. I think I need to go through like a streaming software instead of just using the webcam in order to get to really zoom in on something, so you can actually see what I'm doing a little bit more. If that's of interest, I don't know. It's probably a little bit more interesting. You know, even though I'm not a particularly talented painter, it's probably more interesting than looking at the same thing from a few feet away. I did order a better webcam. So this was actually my old webcam that I used in the past, like when I did the like how to assemble a tiger shark video and stuff like that. That was all done using a webcam that I think is probably broken because it just like does not focus right, and so I'm borrowing one that my wife actually uses for her work. That she told me how to get my own. So she told me how to get my own, so I did. And I think it's going to be a fairly nice one. So actually, it was on I think it was the War Mistress's painting stream. And I asked her what she uses and what she would. You know, she said she was going to get a new one, and so then I just just got what she said she was going to get, which is very much likely overkill for me, but it's not really worth my time to be thinking about about what I'm just not going to spend the time to research it. So I'd rather spend more on a webcam than I need to, and spend less time thinking about it than the other way around. So yeah, but if we're going to be doing this type of thing, I want to make it a little bit more interesting every time. So that's why we move the camera like 2 feet this way, right? You can probably see the tripod is actually on the table here as opposed to off to the side like last time. Yeah, it's incremental improvement. It's evolution. That's what's happening here. Behold, the adaptation. 3D printer, what? Oh, okay. Yeah, missing army or broadside and green stuff is game is weak. Yeah, anyone got tips? So yeah, print it. You could print it with a 3D printer. There are plenty of proxies out there that do a pretty good job of mimicking some of the parts of that kit. I think what I maybe would do would be, like if you're going to go the 3D printer route, if you're going to go the 3D printer route, you probably already are a subscriber to Piper, and she has so many cool bits and stuff. I would print off one of her arms and make it kind of like a replacement, like clearly a replacement arm. Like, don't try to make it look like the broadside arm. Try to make it look like it's something new, something different, right? And so I probably would go that route, and you can scale it and stretch it and whatever, so that it fits the the socket if that's what you want to do. But I would go that route. I would try to make it look like a replacement arm, not try to make it look like the original. Yeah. Oh yeah, you could here. Do I have where am I? I don't. Here, hold on a second. Just waste all that paint. Here's some broadsides that I need to spend some time on, and I probably actually need to hit these with some black primer so these are made using. Let's see, the rail. I'll put it up here so you can actually see it. Maybe. Yeah. So the rail guns are from Taro Model Maker. Taro. Taro. He does really great stuff. You can tell I hit this with the Army Painter primer a little too close. It's got a bit of a sheen there, which is really a kind of a pain in the butt because it's hydrophobic. And so that shininess actually really strongly repels things like, Abaddon Black or whatever. The acrylic paints don't like to hold on to that. So you really got to work with it to get it to actually stick. So the railguns here are from Taro, and then the arms are some of the really early sculpts that Piper did, and they're magnetized. Why? Oh, right, because I could switch them out for plasma. That's why. But yeah, I magnetized them. And that's one of the nice things that Piper does is she gets them prepped for magnetization, so they always are socketed like that. I think these are from maybe the old Hazard proxy. I don't know. She has it's amazing to see the improvement in her. Her old sculpts were good. Her new sculpts are amazing. It's really cool to see the incremental improvement. Using the word incremental a lot today. Sorry, folks. It's really cool to see the improvement. But yeah, so this is some of the older arms that she had done off of one of her kits, and so yeah, I like that. I need to actually give those suits some attention because I like them way more than my kind of the standard pose for the heavy rail rifle, and I like that much more than my old metal broadsides that I have, which all of them have broken off of their bases, partially because of neglect. I was looking at my earlier videos because if you're familiar with the Tabletop Minions web page, right? Adam made a video just earlier this week talking about how it's been 10 years that he's been doing videos on YouTube. And I thought about it for a moment. I said, hey, wait, it's been 10 years since I've been doing videos on YouTube too. And obviously his channel is far more successful than mine. And he, there's lots of reasons for that, including production quality and, audience and all sorts of things, right? And just his general likability, all those things. But I was like, oh, hey, it's been 10 years for me too. And I looked, and it is actually March 2013 was my first video. And my first video on this channel actually is set to private because I think it's so ungodly cringy. I really dislike it. But I think probably for a 10-year celebration next week or the week after, I'll do a video talking about the past 10 years and saying thank you, of course, and re-uploading that first video so you can see what things looked like 10 years ago. So my a little bit after that, one of my earlier videos was looking at broadsides and saying, hey, there's this new broadside kit coming out and it's got a bigger base, so I'm going to rebase these old metal ones. And I did that successfully, but I only did it for one of them, and the other two that I had, I left because it at the time felt like such a huge pain in the butt to rebase them that I never got around to doing the other two. But maybe the time has come. I feel like my hobby skills are a lot better. Like I know how to use things like a hand drill, right? Like not obviously not a. I'm talking about like these things. This is one that the Magnet Baron actually sent over to me in a package full of supplies a while ago. And this one's nice when you really need to get in there. Like if you have a big Forge World model, this one's really nice to just go to town. I more commonly, I don't know where to go. More commonly use a smaller one for infantry models, right? Because the handle is so big. It's a little unruly for these smaller ones, but for big models, it's perfect. But yeah, that was sent over to me by the Magnet Baron. It's been a gracious sponsor of this channel. I appreciate, of course. If you haven't, if you didn't watch the last video, you should. Well, if you haven't watched the last video, you should. But but you could also check out a new Kickstarter launched by the Magnet Baron called VoxLink. It's a wargaming social media app that's sponsoring videos for the month here. So the next video coming out will have that same plug at the beginning. But if you want to support this channel, one way you can do that is visiting the sponsor and saying, hey, Mike sent me. And then I'll be like, who's Mike? Oh, hey, Evan, thanks. Appreciate the super chat. Thanks for being a great viewer. Would I field Broadside at the current meta? No, not in the current meta. No. I think if you're going heavy support, Riptides, Hammerheads are probably the more viable option. Partially because of their maneuverability, partially because of their flexibility. I think Broadsides, especially with rail rifles, actually had a nice leg up in terms of the offensive output during the Armor of Contempt period that we never really got a chance to talk about on this channel. But now that Armor of Contempt is gone, we're kind of back to the old rankings, and they just don't have. The problem with Broadsides is they just don't have synergy with anything, right? They got nerfed to the point of being inert. So they just don't interact with the codex at all, and that's I think that's a pretty big weakness. If that ever changed, like if they got core back, for example, then I think there's certainly a very strong case to be made for their strong consideration. That one change made a huge difference for Broadsides. I mean, maybe bring one if you have a strategy that really could benefit from having one, go for it. But I wouldn't invest heavily. I feel like whenever I say that, then like the next day you'll see something like on Art of War saying Broadsides are the ROP. Tabletop rules. What do you think about Sakia Storm Surge now that I can get -1 to hit? Can it? Oh yeah, it can, because it can be included in the I mean, that's interesting. I think you're giving up a lot for that. In terms of the benefits that you can get from other seps. So Sakia, whatever. Storm Surge, I think would be interesting. I don't think that that's necessarily the best cost benefit though. Yeah, I think I saw Jason McKenzie's list. Yeah, and I do recall it being pretty diverse, right? And that certainly doesn't mean that it's wrong. He might be onto something that everyone, one of the comments I saw on the last video about Arks of Omen detachment lists was that, or maybe it wasn't even a comment on that. Maybe it was a conversation that popped up, potentially inspired by that video. Was that people are just people are interested in Riptides right now because that's like the familiar thing, and for a lot of people it is, right? Like and so maybe maybe we're just talking about Riptides. Maybe I was just talking about Riptides because that's the the thing that's more top of mind, and we haven't thought about the better solution yet. And that might be true, right? So if that's true, maybe Jason is the one that figured it out. But in the games that I play in my head, I still think that they're a little too inflexible, a little too static. I think Vespid have, so his inclusion of Vespid and the Skyray, I think those are choices that I think probably have more appeal to a broader set of players. Vespid can be really good at getting some secondaries done, and they're punchy. They don't last very long is the biggest thing about Vespid, right? They're bugs. You can squish them, right? That's the biggest thing about Vespid. But they still have the math behind them to make them worth it if they survive, and that's okay. So side note on math hammer calculations, right? Is those calculations are instantaneous, right? Like they don't take into account longevity at all. And so something like Pathfinders with rail rifles or Vespid might look really good in those calculations because they have a fair amount of output and they're relatively cheap. But if we were to integrate that over the duration of a game, you might actually get a much poorer result from those offensively compared to something that performs poorer in those calculations, because perhaps the thing that performs poorer is costed higher because it's more durable and therefore is able to last on the tabletop longer, utilize its weaponry more consistently than something like a Vespid or a Pathfinder. And so you actually have a much greater gain from the kind of slow and steady approach from a lower ranking unit compared to something that ranks higher on those instantaneous calculations of offense and point efficiency, like the Vespid or the Pathfinder. And so that consideration of longevity, I think, is something that is important for most units. Things like Vespid, right, where their value may not actually be derived primarily from their offensive capabilities, but instead is derived by their tactical utility in the form of the ability to deep strike, then maybe that number doesn't matter at all. But the thing about broadsides is that their value is almost entirely based on that number, right? Broadsides aren't really performing actions for you or anything like that. You're taking them because you want to shoot things with them. And so if they don't perform very well in those calculations, what do they offer you, really? They can hold objectives, but again, there are other ways you can do that meet multiple other goals of your list building. So that's the thing about broadsides and about Vespid and Pathfinders. Yeah. So yeah, I think they got very wordy there, very jargony for a moment, but yeah. I very much enjoy talking about the nuance of those calculations because I think when I make a video about that stuff, I think there's especially if you don't watch the whole video or really pay attention to what I'm saying and just look at the pictures, I think it's very easy to misconstrue the actual points that are being made. And so it's every time I post a video like that, I would end up having a conversation on Reddit or in the comments that this is the same thing every time about using it as one of many different ways of evaluating unit viability and utility and all sorts of stuff. So we have that conversation every time. But I like having that conversation because I think it's an important one to have within the realm within the realm of playing the game, right? It's not like I'm like, okay, son, today we're going to talk about math hammer calculations. I want you to take this very seriously. It's a very important conversation. Yeah, we're not. It's not that important, right? But within the realm of understanding your codex, it can be. Yeah. Pathfinder's Broadside bring up their accuracy. Yeah, but yes, yes, Evan, you are stats are just a tool, right? They are totally dependent on context and methodology. So stats don't lie, but they don't always answer the question you're asking. That's the important part. You have to ask the right questions. Okay, yeah. I mean, Pathfinders. Yeah, but I don't think that the problem with broadsides is not their accuracy. I mean, any more than it is any other unit's problem, aside from commanders. I will say here, I am happy that I fixed the cord. Like, if you were here last week, you saw that like the cord was like in between me and the table, and it was just it was in the way. It was not good. All right. Okay, so I guess I got the red down here. Cool. So we got a bunch of Fire Wars with red armor. If I'm going to do black here, I don't need to switch on my water. It's very red. Red water, red solo cup. That was the plan all along. I don't need Abaddon Black. I need Eshin Gray. Where the frick is that? I got a bunch of paints over here to blow them up into this other paint rack. Here we go, Eshin Gray. Great, perfect. Or no, is it Eshin? Yeah, because Eshin Gray is darker than Dawnstone. Yeah, okay, that's what I want. Yeah, red Powerade for sure. I try not to drink colored liquids when I'm painting for that reason. or if I do it, to just not have them in a cup. And so here's like some Fresca, right? That's doubly safe because it's not, it's like a off-white color. I guess. Wow, that's really selling the delicious Fresca, right? It's an off-white color. No, but it's not red, and it's in a can instead of a cup, so we're all good, right? Yeah, no, I've had more than a close call. I've definitely chugged a good amount of paint water before. So, and it's not that it's probably I was drinking coffee and I grabbed the wrong thing. It's more likely, but or beer, right? Probably beer, right? if we're making those mistakes, it's probably more likely beer than coffee. But yeah, cool. How's everyone else doing? What is it? What's there? Is it? I'm assuming that at least one of you is painting. Yeah. Jexy, I really actually dislike playing well intoxicated because I for one thing I'm not good at it. I have a hard enough playing sober, man. But then there's a tendency for my opponent to be a little aggressive with my models, and that's how they get broken, and that makes me sad. So I don't like it when my models get broken. So that's like, if you go to like a pub hammer tournament type of deal, those can be lots of fun. Just in moderation, right? I'm not one of those guys that goes to a tournament and then just doesn't remember it the next day. That's not appealing for me. If it is to you, no worries. Do what makes you happy, as long as you're safe and other people stay safe too. But I just don't go that hard. I'm getting old, I guess, huh? Paying right now, yeah. Perpendicular. Versus orcs for Monday. 3 insta stealth suits and a ghost kill against orcs. That'll be interesting. I mean, you'll have nice volume of fire there, and the the orcs won't like the -1 hit on the ghost kill. Or the stealth suits, I guess. Yeah. But I mean, best bet against orcs is just play cagey, shoot them with the shooty end, right? Like that's it. I think in some ways, I think things like stealth suits you have to be really careful with them, right? Because they provide, oftentimes we want to deploy those in places where they're vulnerable to a charge, and you can very easily expedite your opponent's advance by doing that, right? Like you basically give them a stepping stone to get to the rest of your army if they charge into your stealth suits. So you gotta, like I said, you gotta play cagey with those guys. Don't you know? Okay, here's a question. What should I do with the pistol holster? Probably gray, right? Or red, or both. I think the pistol itself should be the same color as the blaster. I don't know, what have I done before? Probably something lazy. It's probably just all black on the other ones. Okay. Yeah, I think we'll just do that, huh? We'll do that. Maybe we'll have to go back and put red on all the holsters too. Pants color. The holster needs to be brown, you're saying, on these guys? Oh, that's a good point about charge distances for orcs. they got brown pants, so you can't see it when they get scared. It's a Deadpool thing, right? Yeah. Wait, is it Deadpool or is that Game of Thrones or is it both? I feel like there's maybe I think it's definitely at least Deadpool, right? Yeah. Yeah. Kind of like a little Slanesh symbol going on here. It's unintentional. Yeah, I've really been digging having kind of some dedicated painting time in my schedule. It just has been a lot of fun. So I appreciate you all hanging out with me. Yeah. What else? What else is going on? Yeah, I am. I haven't played boarding actions yet, but I'm really interested in doing that. I don't have. I don't. My terrain that I have could, you could make it work for that. I have a bunch of can terrain from. I want to say it's from Prometheum Forge. Pretty sure that's yeah. Prometheum Forge. Got it years ago. So I don't know. Are they even in business anymore? Oh, thanks, Evan. Where would you like them to take the lore going forward for Firesight and the rest of Tau? What's your theory on the Tau warp entity? Oh yeah, so you're like the warp entity you're talking about, like the greater good kind of thing that the if I'm recalling right, that when they went through the Startide Nexus, right? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah. So I mean, I think there's still something to like the deceiver being something with the Tau, but of course that's a Catan, not a warp entity. So I don't know, honestly, right? Like, yeah, this is one of the reasons why I am excited about the Arks of Omen, because I feel like it's going to give us some really nice progress for Farsight's story. The novels I think are really enjoyable. I've read those; they're great. I like how they really provide some nuance to him and flesh him out a bit. I don't feel you don't get that same level of humanity in him in the Codex, right? And so the novels themselves are really good for that. The progress that I'm hoping we'll see with like Arks of Omen is some grand revelation in the Empire about more importantly, it's not so much about Farsight. It's about that Farsight was right? Like, the average Tau citizen, used to see Farsight as this hero of the Empire, right? And then he gets exiled essentially, and they don't see him that they see him as a traitor now. And so that type of vindication, I think, would be really interesting. I don't think they would actually ever do that though in the lore, because that removes this kind of central tension that they've established for the faction, right? Like there's this central tension of the ethereals maybe not being so awesome, right? and and then in the novels, it's very clear that the ethereals are not awesome at all. that especially on Va is a very very bad dude. And I think if they had that kind of revelation, they would be removing that, and they've worked somewhat hard to bring that into the lore for Tau, because they don't want Tau just to be one-dimensional good guys. They'd be giving that up if they had some sort of revelation that, oh, Farsight was right, the ethereals are using pheromones or whatever to control us. So I don't think that they would ever go that far, or at least now, without some other event lined up to take the story forward. But I think more likely there's more likely going to be something where Farsight figures out more about the Dawnblade, figures out what's going on with the Dawnblade, figures out more about Chaos, and maybe dies. I'm not going to be surprised if Farsight actually dies at some point in the near future, like as some sort of grand sacrifice. So I'll be sad if that happens, but because I like Farsight quite a bit. It would be cool too if he had some sort of reconnection with Shadow Sun or Case, right? Like if they had Case show up out of the blue, like okay, this is what's going to happen in the Arks of Omen Farsight book, is that Farsight's going to be cornered. He's going to be on his last limbs. He's going to be thinking he has to sacrifice himself. There's going to be this like big buildup, right? He's going to feel like he has to sacrifice himself for the greater good. And OK shows out of nowhere and just saves everyone's butt. That's what it would be. I don't think that's actually going to happen. But I would laugh very, very loudly if that were to happen. You wonder if they'll ever do an OK's model, right? Or bring him into the codex, because he's in the lore. He's totally real, right? Like it's not like he's made up. I mean, it is all made up, right? But they've maintained him as a character. So you wonder if they would ever do something like that. You almost think that maybe next codex they would do something like that, because they want, they need new models and stuff, and that would be one way they could do it. Right, yeah, like yes, all words are made up. This is correct. Pheromones, I don't think they are technically confirmed in lore. So in the what was that called? It wasn't Apocrypha. It was I cannot remember the name of it, but it was like that Xenos biology text that is really out of print at this point. That's no longer canon. In that many of you have likely seen this, this drawing of like a dissected ethereal, right? And has the thing in the forehead. I'm forgetting what it's called, what they call it. And yeah, the author of that book speculates that it is a gland for pheromone release. And I don't think it's explicitly stated in other sources. However, there are two things that support that as being still the case. One is just the way that Anva works, because Anva currently is dead, right? And he's currently dead, and he's just being, but the public doesn't know that, so he's just continually presented as a hologram, and the Tau that are listening to him are persuaded to do what he wants them to do, not by the hologram necessarily, but by the two ethereal guards that are with him, which have their own pheromones that they can emit to persuade Tau to do what they want them to do. So that's my understanding of how Anva works right now, and so that's consistent. There's also some stuff in the Farside novels that support that, where there's a character in those stories that is encountered by an ethereal, and is told to harm themselves, and they do so without question, because the ethereal told them to, and it's depicted as an involuntary thing. So I think all that mesh fits with the pheromones still, unless to Evan's question, there's some sort of warp influence, right? And I don't know. My guess is the thing in the Startide Nexus is more of like something related to Eldar or something than like Chaos Gods, but that would be my guess. Is more Eldery than anything, but I think they did. That's one of they're kind of J.J. Abramsing it, right? Like it's a mystery box thing. You're not it's not necessarily supposed to be anything you can figure out with the existing information. They just put it in there to be a mystery. Oh yeah, something like that. I mean, that's essentially those are pheromones, right? Like pheromones are just hormones, hormones are just chemicals and proteins produced by by a body, right? So they're signaling chemicals in your blood or whatever, and so pheromones are just basically the same thing. I mean, the virus component of it would be virus implies a external, not organism, because viruses aren't alive, but you know what I'm saying. All right. All right. All right, I got a few more minutes here before I have to move on to my next project. But it seems like feedback so far, just based on the number of people that showed up for this stream versus the last one, is that we like afternoons on Friday a little bit more than Friday mornings. I'm going to ask the people that are here to tell me that, yes, I'm here because I'm able to be here. So maybe not the most insightful question, but still. Enjoy getting a chance to chat with everyone, hear about your ideas and stuff. Yeah, I'm excited to get in more games with the Arks of Omen detachment because I just think the game's actually in a pretty good spot right now, especially if you look at the top, like the top tournament stuff. Is there's a nice diversity in army lists, right? It's not. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of Space Marines, but it's not. It's not totally one-sided, right? Like there's a good mix of factions. I feel like the game's in a good spot. So so I'll go out the window when the new edition comes. Right? Like I get why they're doing a new edition because that's the business model, but I don't doesn't feel like it's really needed to me, right? Like when 7th edition came out, that felt like it was needed because 6 was getting so bloated. And then when 8th came out, it felt like it was needed because the 7th had become so just ridiculous with formations and everything. When 9th came out, it seemed like a nice. It didn't seem like it was totally needed, but like after the Psychic Awakening stuff, there was enough bloat that 9th edition was a good refresh. I don't feel like that bloat is here in 9th edition. I don't feel like we really need a new edition right now. That the game's in a good spot and why mess with a good thing. But so this is, I guess I'm oversimplifying a little bit. I do remember when 7th came out, I was like, man, this is just like, there's not actually anything different. They're just putting all these same rules in a new book and telling me you have to buy it. But I don't know. I'm sure I have a video from then that articulates my thoughts on it, but and maybe it's different than what I'm remembering. But yeah, I don't really want a new one. Yeah. All right, cool. That's good to know, James. Yeah. Actually, thinking about the time zone difference, that makes a lot of sense. If I was going in the morning, it's probably not as convenient for people on the other side of the pond. Kind of awful accent. Sorry. Just lose all the subscribers now. Forgive me, please. Yeah, I should make an apology video just for that 5-second bad accent. I can use the new webcam for it, right? Yeah, I'm glad I don't make the kind of content where I would hopefully never be in a position where I have to make an apology video. Jeez. How bad do you have to screw up to be that person? I guess if I like went to a tournament and cheated, right? Or like acted really poorly, that would be like a apology video type thing, right? Yeah. But I'm not going to do that. It's not really in the cards for me. So like I said, I'm glad I'm not in a position where I think I'll ever need to make an apology video. Because I feel like if you're at the point where you need to make the apology video, you've already lost, right? Like you're not. The apology video does very little for you. Okay. On that note, thanks for watching, everybody. Appreciate your time, and as always, happy wargaming. I'll see you next week.